I'm gonna give you the secrets to freak athlete development, and we're gonna start right now. So before we get into developing a freak athlete and the definition behind that freak athlete, thank you for watching, and hopefully you watched the first part of this lecture series. So we're gonna have 3 parts of this long duration lecture series where we're gonna teach you all the process that we use here at GarageLink, that we've used to develop Olympic caliber athletes, professional caliber athletes, world-class caliber athletes in multiple different sports. And then we're gonna show you exactly how we do that, especially in this video here. So we're taking the example of the freak athlete. The freak athlete identified shortly, thinking about someone who's super motivated internally. They're also a twitchy individual. They can coordinate very rapidly. They can take instruction and criticism very well, and they have very good control through multiple ranges of motion. Their body understands the energy systems that they have to be utilizing, and then also they have good hand-eye coordination, and they recover very well. And so they basically are the freak athlete. And in this case, we're gonna use the example of Nick Singleton. So Nick Singleton is an athlete who came to us at the end of 5th grade, going into 6th grade, and a totally normal kid, extremely long-legged. At the time, he had said, I want to be, one of the best football players that I could possibly be. I want to be the absolute best ever, right? And every kid has that dream, but then over time, the freaky part was that Nick really showed that he meant that. And I think that was where the freak aspect comes into play. But we're gonna show you exactly how we took Nick as that blueprint early on, as that blank slate, and just created him over time, and how he partook in the entire experience and overcame multiple different obstacles to eventually get to the point of where he was the best running back recruited in the class of 2021 and the best high school football player in the class of 2021 and a 5-star football player. So now we're gonna get into that and show you, if you can remember back to that previous lecture where we broke down, you have the 11 sort of areas over here, and then you have those 9 key factors behind training over here. Now we're gonna go into that specific detail. Again, if you want even more information on this, you can click on the link down below and it'll take you to the Coach's Corner. And the Coach's Corner is basically every single week we get emails or comments that we respond to, and I respond to with a video essay that you can then have in your pocket and basically say, okay, Dane sent out an email this week. It's a video of me discussing different things. So you can click on that link, head over to GarageLink.com and be part of that Coach's Corner. But now, starting with Nicholas, okay, so what's the sport, right? The sport is football. So in football, now we can start to go down into mining through everything. What kind of sport are we dealing with? We've got an open skilled sport, okay? So it's open skilled. That means that when Nicholas is participating in the sport, and he's a running back, okay? When he is a running back, we have to focus on technical coordination. So that gets a check, okay? So now we're gonna start to think about this stuff through transfer of training, okay? So the number of checks will determine how important these things are to that specific development, right? So if we have this over here and this over here is almost like a flow chart to a point, and we can rate the level of needs in those specific sports, now we can see, okay, check by check by check by check, where the importance comes into play and how that transfers over to the sport. Is it a team or an individual sport? It's a team sport, and so you've got to have really good leadership. You'll have to check that athlete typing. Programming has to be on point, so that's extremely important, and that sort of goes into those 3 aspects behind the team. Now we get into athlete typing. If we can remember, athlete typing would be bucketing our individuals, okay? So basically analyzing them, psychoanalyzing them. What type of person are we dealing with? Are we dealing with a type 1, a Zen style athlete that always just sort of does what they're supposed to do? They listen, they take instruction, they take guidance, they take criticism well, and they keep going. Type 2 would be a more social type athlete. They're the athlete that comes into the gym and tells you all of their life problems, how the world is all stacked up against them, and all the things that they're struggling with, and then they come in and train really well. Type 3 would be that meathead style athlete, the athlete that goes for broke every single day and feels that they have to put out every ounce of energy possible so that they can have a good training session. So in this athlete typing, I'm gonna tell you right now that one of the biggest things behind Nicholas is that he is a type 1, okay? So he's that Zen style athlete. He is the individual that literally will just do exactly what you tell him to do, okay? There's gonna be minimal critical feedback, like meaning, I should say minimal negative feedback, where he's challenging you. that almost never happens unless he's trolling you. It's almost always an instance of, I will do what you say. And I think if we can remember back as well to that journey description in the first lecture where I talked about what's the whole point. The whole point is we have the start here, and then we have this long journey of triumph and whatnot, and that leads to this dream point. And the point behind coaching in general is that we want to have someone who comes in and does exactly what you tell them to do, and they're open-minded and they're willing to work and just do it. And they get to this part, okay? To the dream, to where we want to go. And the whole phenomenal or awesome thing behind coaching is that when you have someone that executes the way that you envision the execution being done, and they see it through day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, until they get to the dream, that's when as a coach you sit back and you're like, wow, it worked. This dude did everything I asked him to do. This dude did that to a T. And that's the big part here with type 1, is that a type 1 athlete is almost always gonna execute your programming, okay? So we got that athlete typing, and the leadership becomes much easier. You have to lay it out clearly and lay out your expectations clearly, but the leadership becomes simple. I'll share a quick story of Nicholas. Is that COVID happened from his sophomore to his junior year, okay? The most important year for him as an athlete essentially was when COVID hit. So how did he train? The first thing he did was, hey Dane, can we get barbells and stuff? Leave them outside on the turf, we'll pick them up and we'll put them in our garage. Then he trained by himself, no squat racks, no bench press, nothing. And this is a kid who would show up on Zoom meetings and I'd say, hey, we gotta do some front squats to increase your max strength. We gotta work on some absolute strength because we're dealing with a football player, with a running back. Nicholas would clean all the way up to one day where we cleaned 330 pounds and he proceeded to front squat that for 5. So Nick was willing to train by himself with me on Zoom, not playing any music, not doing anything, but executing the plan, okay? And that goes back to being that type 1. Okay, so that feeds into everything. Now, energy systems. Remember back to lecture 1 where we talk about the alactic energy system, the glycolytic energy system, and the aerobic energy system. One of the complicated points here with football is that, especially when we're talking about running backs, and Nicholas playing both ways, basically every play of every single game, is that I think it's all of them, right? So now you have to start to figure out, all right, we need to increase his absolute strength for sure. And that's gonna play into the first two, the phosphagen or the alactic and the glycolytic. We need more technical coordination, so that's also gonna be in there. We need to have, plyometric work here. That's gonna be alactic. That's gonna be another focus there, slightly glycolytic. DTC and accessory work, that's gonna be alactic and glycolytic. Speed work, alactic, okay? So now we're starting to look at, all right, the sport needs coordination, needs max strength, needs plyometric work, needs DTC, needs speed. Okay, that's gonna help us with when we're going back into programming. Ranges of motion. Okay, another check for technical coordination, and then a check for absolute strength, right? So that leads into full range, all angles, all craziness, everything you can think of. So range of motion, absolute strength, plyometric work, yes. DTC, and speed work in various ranges. So that could be doing speed starts or doing starts from a unilateral position in a very deep area and a very tall area, because it's all dependent upon the coordination and the ranges of motion that we need. Okay, so we're starting to see how this plays out. Muscles used, everything. Okay, we're talking about a football player or running back, every muscle, everything. Okay, everything. So everything will lead into another check for coordination, another check for absolute strength. Plyometrics, we can even think about explosive push-ups, push-ups to boxes, DTC work, again, right there. Speed even, speed if you think about a stiff arm, as well as obviously sprinting. So now we can start to see how this is playing out. Opposing force, yes, large human beings. That gives a vote for technical coordination and for absolute strength, because now we need to get really explosive and really strong. So we need to learn how to move heavy weight fast, and we need to learn how to move heavyweight, okay? Those are two big factors there. And then the speed of play, okay? Speed of play, chaotic, right? So it's chaotic. So that means plyometrics needs to get a vote there. Speed will get a vote, and I will put technical coordination as a vote for speed, because of the means of coordinating with somebody potentially on him. Nicholas, in this case, is a running back. So that's another area. Hand-eye coordination. Yes, he needs to catch the ball. He needs to not fumble at all. Okay, so there is fumbling, yes, is arguably not necessarily hand-eye coordination, but catching a ball is getting pitches. If you're executing a sweep, you need to have good hand-eye coordination. So hand-eye coordination for me would be predominantly DTC work, but my overarching bias towards technical coordination here adds another check mark there. Okay, and then time of development. Time of development is gonna be about 6+ years to get to that elite level. So here's where, you know, nutrition factors in, and nutrition probably should have another notch there. Programming as well, leadership, you know, all of this stuff factors into that time of development. I'm gonna put an extra one there. So now we can start to analyze, what did we do with Nicholas? We can see the main factors is I need to understand with my leadership capabilities what type of athlete we're dealing with. Okay, so we athlete type him, that's important. He's a Zen athlete. He's not gonna really respond to hoorah type yelling, everybody getting up for it. Yes, he still does respond to that, but he's extremely internally motivated. So back slaps, he doesn't actually like. Things like that, he doesn't necessarily like. He just likes to train. He just likes to push himself. He just wants to see what he can do next. That doesn't mean that when he's playing in front of 110,000 people at Beaver Stadium, that he's not gonna get up for that because there's 110,000 people. He still will, but ultimately he's very internally motivated. And that's where we've gotta look back to that start here when he was in 6th grade saying, I wanna be the best of the best. And then the dream is here at this point. You know, we're just along that line where the dream is to be a 5-star athlete. The next dream would be, you know, an All-American, you know, running back at Penn State. Maybe, you know, you lead the Big Ten in rushing, and then the next dream would be you go to the NFL. Okay, so we're just part of the way along his journey. And so how can we take this information now and lay out an actual training day for Nicholas? And so a lot of people too will also say, well, my objection would be, well, Nick's just a freak athlete. Not really. He's freakish in the fact that he started young and he just kept coming back. That's where he's freakish, okay? He's big, he's strong, he's explosive, but it took time to develop that. And also, like, that might be another thing. Well, how much time do you have to execute a training system, a training day? That would be 40 to 75 minutes, okay? So that's what you're gonna need. But now you go into, what's the transfer of training of each thing? And if you just look, this is going to be the #1 key aspect, technical coordination. And then when you take that next step, it's like, now, what are the next things? And if you notice, absolute strength, plyometric, dynamic trunk control, and speed, they're all equal. So the big factor now is what fuels technical coordination, okay? Absolute strength. So absolute strength is probably gonna be a tie for second, and then third, we're gonna have sort of like the plyometric speed realm, okay? And they're gonna be a tie for second or a very, 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 very close third. But the only reason why I would edge out absolute strength is because it fuels the technical coordination movements. And so now we can take all of this and say, well, what if I don't have that much equipment? And just remember back to that Zoom discussion, right? Where Nick just had a barbell and plates. Okay, so he had a barbell and plates, and his dad randomly found a 70-pound dumbbell and 90-pound dumbbell. So he would do floor dumbbell presses and dumbbell snatches. Okay, and he had a speed ladder, so he could do speed work in that area. That was all he had for almost 8 months of training. Okay, so that's another key factor, is that you can program and say, all right, technical coordination, we're gonna do a snatch or a power snatch or a high hang snatch, a power clean, a 1-box clean, whatever it is, almost every single day. And it doesn't mean we're going as heavy as possible. We're just moving for speed. We're moving for range of motion. We're using to increase specific muscles that are being used to then improve our ability to recruit and put out a lot of power to opposition or force into our opposition. We wanna improve our energy system, so we might actually train the technical coordination movements over 15 sets of one, but we're doing it over a 15-minute time frame. So now that's going to be training the alactic system, and it's going to be training the glycolytic system. And we might at times with Nick do that in team settings where there's a large group around him as well, because he has to be around that large group, being in a team sport. And then we can start to really think into that speed of play, and then that's going to fuel all that time of development. And so we take that technical coordination movement, let's say a snatch or clean variation, power clean, and it goes into a back squat, and we might do a back squat with an ab exercise, and then we do some dynamic trunk control and accessory work that ideally would fuel absolute strength, it would fuel technical coordination, it will fuel speed and plyometric work as well. So we want to teach Nick how to hold a hip lock. We want to teach Nick how to cut properly with those accessory works, with that dynamic trunk control work, with usage of bands, kettlebells, all this other stuff. And then we can do some specific trunk work at the end of a training session. And so when we're trying to develop a freak, we have to measure what these attributes here and how they're going to be checked off with these key factors here. And then when we check that off, now we know which sports need more technical coordination, or which sport needs more absolute strength or more plyometric work. And then also understanding that technical coordination and absolute strength can transfer to speed, plyometric work, dynamic trunk control, and then the factor that nutrition has or plays in the entire role and development of the full system. So my whole goal was we could lay this out, you could see now, okay, Nick Singleton is somebody who benefited from this system. I'm a specific coach, or I'm an athlete. If I start to incorporate this, this is where we can go. Okay, this is how we can start here at point A that lead to point B, that then leads to point C, which then leads to the dream. Okay, and then learn that process along the way, so now we can see that. And so my next goal, we're gonna have a third lecture of this. It's gonna come out in 2 days. If you wanna be part of the Coach's Corner, you can click on the link down below and get into the Coach's Corner. And if not, you can comment down below, you can leave those questions, and those questions that we can use to help build this entire system further, so that you have a better understanding of how we here at Garage Strength take someone like Nick Singleton, use this blueprint, and develop that total freak. So comment down below, pay attention. In 2 days, we're gonna release that third lecture to this entire system, so that now you guys can use this and help yourselves develop that system even better, so that you can be part of another crazy journey. And ultimately, you have to remember to cultivate your power. Peace.